Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. Here I share a brand new story every day. If you enjoy my videos, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now let's dive into today's story. Someone is in my friend's hotel. This story isn't about me, it's about a new friend of mine who moved to Switzerland around 2 weeks ago and lived in a stay-at-home apartment before she and her family found a new and proper house to live in. We will call my friend Ellie. Ellie has given me permission to write about this here, and as I type, she's sleeping on my bed, completely terrified from the recent things happening to her. She doesn't know about my abilities, and I think I'll keep it that way until I trust her enough, and she's okay to hear it. I met Ellie at my school, and we became friends. Everything was normal. We were then assigned to work on a partner project for our history class, and we had to make a model for it. It had only been a week since her arrival in Switzerland, and she was staying in a nearby hotel apartment-type place. I live quite far from my school compared to her, so we decided to take a few materials from the school to her hotel. Last Monday, I entered her hotel, and the same thing happened to me. Chills, ticklish, staring at the same point for a while, but I've learned to snap out of it. I was uncomfortable at first, but apparently whatever was there moved from the hotel because I didn't feel it anymore. It was definitely not a good one. That was the first time I ever felt it. Then on Wednesday, we had PE before school ended, and we had to work on our projects. So Ellie and I decided to go to her hotel, take a shower, and start working on the project. Ellie took a shower first, and I sat on her bed while the bathroom was on the other side of her bedroom door. She came out, and I went in, saw the bathtub, and asked if I could chill in it for 15 minutes. She said no worries, and I got into the bathroom, took whatever I needed, and once I was comfortable, I kind of fell asleep. I may have gotten out 20 minutes later, and when I entered her room, she had the model we were working on, and on top of that, cans of soda. I just laughed and asked, "Why soda out of nowhere?" She looked up at me from her phone and said, "Didn't you want it?" I said, "No, I never asked for soda." And then she said something along the lines of, "Shut up, you were in the bathtub, and when I asked if you needed anything, you said, 'I'm good, just get the project and a can of Coke, please.' And when I was at the fridge, you literally screamed, 'Thank you,' from all the way, and I thought you came out, but you were still in the bathroom because the door was locked." I looked at her dumbfounded and said, "I was sleeping for the past 10 to 12 minutes, and I never asked you to get a Coke at all. I didn't even know you had Coke. I never even talked." We were kind of creeped out, but we didn't think about it much because Ellie seemed to think that she was the one who wanted Coke and to start the project, so that's why she heard me say it. Even though I agreed with her, I still felt a nagging feeling, and I could tell she was a bit scared when I said I never talked to her once in the bathtub. On Friday, we were at her place again, finishing off everything on our model. At this point, no one was at the hotel except me and her. Her parents were somewhere else, and her older brother was at a friend's house watching football. It was just us. When we were just on our phones scrolling through stuff, we heard something like plates being moved around by the kitchen. We thought her brother had come home or her parents. She said loudly, "Me and Jess are here," and went back to her phone. Moments later, we heard the chair being moved from the kitchen, and Ellie got up to check. While I was in her room, I heard her say, "Hi," and I looked at the door of the room. She wasn't there. I just said, "Hey," back in case she said it, but went into her parents' room to get something, which was next to hers. "Hi," she said again, and here comes that terrible feeling where chills come. I feel all ticklish and alert, and I'm staring at the doorway, and I realize there is something extremely wrong. I jumped out of her bed, rushed to the kitchen, and saw her closing the hotel door. I asked what she was doing, and she said she thought she heard a light knock on the door. I asked if she called me, and she said no. Not even a hi, and she looks at me and says, "Nope. Why?" I was speechless and still felt something, but I decided to tell her, "I thought I heard you say hi to me." She said, "Nah, I was being creeped out by the door. It wouldn't stop knocking until I opened it." I was at a loss for words and didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell her that there was something here. I was afraid that she wouldn't believe me, and maybe if I said it out loud, that energy could hear me and do something wrong. So I laughed it off, and it was almost 8 p.m., so I decided to go home once her parents or brother came back, because I knew leaving her here was the last thing she needed when the presence was still there. It didn't leave like last time. Around half an hour later, her parents came, and I left, saying, "Take care," and all. I know this is for only 2 weeks more before they moved out, but I couldn't help researching that night about the hotel. Upon reviews, there were no such paranormal things that happened there. I thought maybe they never posted it. Or maybe this one has something to do with Ellie and her family, or just Ellie. I didn't get why I heard her saying hi to me, but it was something wrong. Yesterday, she called me around 7:30 p.m. and asked me in a low voice, "Do ghosts exist?" I took a few seconds to reply, "I believe if there is good, there is also bad, so I think they do." I heard her voice crack as she said, "I think there is a ghost here." I didn't know what to say and settled on asking where her parents were. She replied, "Checking the kitchen because we thought my brother shattered glasses and plates, but he was in the toilet." I was confused and asked why they would think that, and she said, "Because we thought we heard him crying in the kitchen." I was shocked and didn't know what to do. We stayed on the call for a few minutes before I heard her parents say they were moving to another hotel, and I told her to come to my house and spend the night with me and my family. They got here last night around 9, and her parents explained the situation. My parents welcomed them warmly, but didn't completely believe the whole spirit thing. So now it's 12:50 p.m., and Ellie is still sleeping because she had a rough night and couldn't sleep well. She is terrified, and I think it will take a good while for her to recover from this. Haunted hotel in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. This was a wild experience, the kind of night you just want to end as quickly as possible. It was June 2021, at the peak of summer. My girlfriend Sarah and I planned a trip from Denver to Aspen, Glenwood Springs, and Snowmass. We had a fondness for the charming hotels operated by Colorado Tourism. These state-operated hotels, though government-run, offered unmatched hospitality and delectable food. Most of these hotels were housed in historic buildings that dated back to the late 19th century. Our stays in Aspen and Snowmass were serene and delightful. However, our stay in Glenwood Springs was different, memorable in a way we hadn't anticipated. We had booked a night at Hotel Mountain View in Glenwood Springs. Nestled between the Glenwood Springs Hot Springs and the Glenwood Caverns Adventure Park, the hotel seemed like an ideal vacation spot during the day, but at night it revealed a different side. We checked in around 2 p.m., stowed our bags, enjoyed a hearty lunch at the hotel restaurant, and spent the day exploring the nearby attractions, including a historic church built in the 1880s. As dusk settled over the town, we returned to our room. The atmosphere in the hotel seemed to shift with the fading light. That's when we first heard it. The noise coming from the room next to ours. It sounded like heavy furniture being dragged across the floor and muffled voices having an intense conversation. At first, I thought it was just other guests being inconsiderate. I decided to open our door and ask them to keep it down. But when I stepped into the hallway, it was eerily silent. The corridor stretched out in both directions, dimly lit and empty. There was no one there, no sound at all. Darkness pooled in the corners, and the only thing I could hear was the distant hum of the building's old ventilation system. I shrugged it off, thinking perhaps the old building was playing tricks on us. We moved to the balcony, seeking the comfort of the fresh evening air. We opened a bottle of gin we had brought along and ordered a few lemonades from room service. The cool breeze was refreshing, and we tried to relax, sipping our drinks and enjoying the view of the distant mountains bathed in twilight. After a while, we decided to head downstairs to the restaurant for dinner. Our room, 301, was on the top floor, a corner room with a staircase on one side and other rooms on the other. As we descended, the wooden stairs creaked under our weight, adding to the eerie ambiance. The restaurant was cozy and the food delicious, but an unsettling feeling lingered in the back of my mind. After dinner, we took a stroll in the hotel's garden to digest our meal before heading to bed. The garden was beautiful, with neatly trimmed hedges and blooming flowers, but as we walked further, the night seemed to press in around us. There was a long layout of metal tables and chairs, painted white, arranged in a conference-like setup. As we passed by, the metal chairs creaked and groaned as if unseen guests were shifting in their seats. It sounded like a ghostly dinner party was taking place, the faint murmurs of conversation just out of earshot. One of the hotel staff approached us, a concerned look on his face. He advised us not to wander too far into the garden at this hour, for safety reasons, he said. We nodded, feeling the weight of his words, and made our way back to our room. Back in our room, the noises from the adjacent room grew louder and more persistent. It sounded like someone was furiously rearranging the furniture, the constant thud and scrape echoing through the walls. The knocking started then, soft at first, then more insistent. Our bedroom door rattled with each knock. I called out, asking who was there, but received no response. Growing increasingly uneasy, I called the restaurant and asked them to send up some drinking water. Moments later, the door knocked again. I opened it, expecting to see a staff member, but there was no one there. The knocking continued, 5 times between my call for water and the arrival of the staff member. When he finally arrived, I asked him about the noises and the knocks. He looked puzzled, but promised to check into it before hurrying away. The noises persisted throughout the night, growing more unbearable. We struggled to sleep, our nerves frayed by the incessant sounds. Morning finally arrived, bringing with it a sense of relief. The sun's rays filtered through the curtains, chasing away the shadows of the night. The corridor, once filled with eerie noises, was now silent. During checkout, Sarah insisted I ask the hotel manager about the disturbances. Reluctantly, I approached the reception. The manager greeted us warmly, and I brought up the noise issue. He seemed genuinely surprised. Since you are a couple, we thought of giving you privacy by assigning you the top-floor corner room so you wouldn't be disturbed. We couldn't sleep all night because of the continuous sounds of people talking and furniture moving around, I explained. The manager's expression changed. He glanced at the staff nearby, who exchanged uneasy looks. The room next to yours was empty. In fact, there were no other guests on your entire floor. Sarah and I stared at each other, the reality of what we had experienced sinking in. We left the hotel in a daze, the staff's silence adding to the sense of unease. We drove to our next destination, Snowmass, and spent the entire day recovering from the sleepless night. The memory of that stay is now etched in our minds. Even now, I wonder what we truly encountered that night. Was it the lingering presence of the past or something else entirely? The shadow I saw at a hotel. Last month, my sister Lily and I decided to take a weekend trip to a quaint little town called Fairview, nestled in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. We were looking forward to some relaxation and sightseeing, and we checked into the Fairview Inn, a charming old hotel that had been in operation since the late 1800s. The building had a rustic charm with its antique furniture and creaky wooden floors, but it also exuded an air of mystery that was both intriguing and unsettling. Our room was on the second floor, at the end of a long, dimly lit hallway. The wallpaper was faded and peeling in places, and the old-fashioned lamps cast long, eerie shadows on the walls. Despite the slightly creepy ambience, we were excited about our stay and unpacked our bags quickly. That first night, we stayed up late chatting and watching a movie. Around 1 a.m., we decided to call it a night. I climbed into the plush, yet slightly lumpy bed, and despite the comfortable surroundings, I found it hard to fall asleep. Something about the room felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Around 3 a.m., I woke up feeling a strange urge to use the bathroom. As I opened my eyes, I saw a shadowy figure peeking out from the bathroom door. My heart raced, but I convinced myself it was just a trick of the light. I really needed to use the toilet, so I forced myself out of bed and walked towards the bathroom, trying to ignore the growing sense of dread. The bathroom was small and dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. As I turned on the light, the shadow vanished. I used the toilet as quickly as I could, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I washed my hands and glanced nervously at the mirror above the sink. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but as I turned off the light and stepped back into the room, I saw it again, a shadow in the mirror directly in front of my bed. My breath caught in my throat, and I stood frozen in place, staring at the spot where the shadow had just been. Then it vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. Lily stirred and sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked sleepily. "Nothing," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I didn't want to scare her. "Just couldn't sleep. Go back to bed." She shrugged and lay back down, falling asleep almost immediately. I climbed into bed too, but sleep eluded me for the rest of the night. My mind kept replaying the eerie images, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone in the room. Morning finally came, and with the first light of dawn, the oppressive atmosphere of the room seemed to lift slightly. I got up, dressed quickly, and ran out to the truck, desperate to escape the lingering unease. Lily took her time packing our things, giving me puzzled looks as she moved about the room. "Why are you in such a hurry?" she asked, clearly confused by my behavior. I don't know. I had a weird night," I admitted, not ready to divulge the full story. "Let's just get out of here." As we drove away from the Fairview Inn, I couldn't shake the memory of the shadow. The hotel had given me a weird, creepy, and undeniably bad vibe. I began to wonder if what I had seen was a demon. It was my first encounter with anything remotely supernatural, and it had left me deeply unsettled. Could it have been a spirit? I didn't know. All I knew was that it was terrifying, and I couldn't explain it. I had heard tales of demons and spirits lingering in places that exuded a creepy and foreboding atmosphere. The old hotel, with its long history and antique furnishings, seemed like the perfect setting for such an encounter. I still haven't told Lily about the shadow. Part of me doesn't want to scare her, and another part of me isn't sure if she'll even believe me. But I can't stop thinking about it. I keep replaying the moment in my mind, wondering if there was something I missed, some detail that could explain what I saw. The presence of the mirror directly in front of my bed only added to my fear. I had heard stories about the dangers of sleeping in front of mirrors, about how they could serve as portals for spirits and other entities. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that the shadow had something to do with that mirror. Despite my fear, I'm oddly proud of myself for using the bathroom after seeing the shadow. It's something I never thought I would do, especially after watching so many horror movies about demons and ghosts. But necessity trumped fear that night, and I faced whatever it was, even if only for a moment. As we drove away from Fairview, I felt a mix of relief and lingering fear. The shadow I saw haunted hotel encounters. My husband, Michael, and I, along with our beloved cat, Luna, have been living in the Ravenswood Inn, an old hotel with a storied past. Nestled on the outskirts of New Orleans, this place was once an asylum for the criminally insane, and its basement served as a morgue many decades ago. We had stayed in various rooms throughout the hotel, but one in particular, room 213, held the most unsettling experiences. From the moment we moved into room 213, the atmosphere felt heavy, almost suffocating. The air was thick with a sense of despair and melancholy. Luna, usually a calm and affectionate cat, immediately began acting strangely. She would follow something invisible around the room, her eyes darting frantically to every corner and ceiling. One night, as I watched TV in bed, Luna climbed her cat tree and stared at me with an intensity I had never seen before. Her ears were pinned back, and she looked furious. Luna had always been the sweetest, most gentle cat, so this behavior was deeply unsettling. I tried to soothe her, but she hissed and swatted at me, something she had never done. Fearful and confused, I backed away and lay still, tears streaming down my face. The room's energy felt malevolent, almost as if it were pressing down on me. I could feel an oppressive presence, and every movement I made seemed to agitate Luna further. After what felt like an eternity, Luna finally calmed down and returned to her usual self. I hesitated, but eventually reached out to pet her, relieved when she responded affectionately. I held her close, crying tears of relief, grateful that the frightening episode had passed. Days later, we decided to move to a different room. As Michael went back to room 213 to grab the last of our belongings, he too felt an eerie, negative energy surrounding him. Michael was usually skeptical about the supernatural, always seeking logical explanations for odd occurrences, but this time he couldn't deny the palpable sense of dread that enveloped him in that room. While Luna and I waited in our new room, Michael returned, visibly shaken. He admitted to feeling an intense, almost malevolent presence in room 213. This confession from my typically rational husband confirmed that something truly disturbing resided in that room. As we settled into our new room, the contrast was stark. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. Luna resumed her normal behavior, and for the first time in days, we all felt at ease. However, the memory of room 213 lingered in our minds, a dark shadow that refused to fade. Over the next few weeks, I did some research on the Ravenswood Inn. I discovered numerous accounts of paranormal activity, particularly in room 213. Guests had reported seeing shadowy figures, hearing disembodied voices, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. Some even claimed to have seen apparitions of former asylum inmates. It seemed our experiences were not isolated incidents. One evening, a fellow guest at the inn, an older woman named Mrs. Thompson, struck up a conversation with us in the lobby. She had been staying at the Ravenswood Inn for years and seemed to know its history well. When I mentioned our stay in room 213, her expression grew serious. "Ah, room 213, she said, her voice tinged with a hint of fear. "Many have reported strange happenings there. They say it's haunted by the spirit of a former inmate, a man who was wrongfully committed and died in that very room. His anger and sorrow are still very much present." Her words sent chills down my spine. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the terrifying experiences we had endured now had a possible explanation. The spirit of a tormented soul trapped in a place where he had suffered unjustly was reaching out in anger and despair. Despite our new, peaceful room, I couldn't shake the feeling that the spirit in room 213 was still there, watching, waiting. I decided to take action. I contacted a local paranormal investigator, hoping to bring some closure to the restless spirit. The investigator, a woman named Claire, agreed to visit the hotel and conduct an investigation. The night of the investigation, Claire brought her equipment and set up in room 213. Michael and I waited anxiously in the lobby along with Luna, who seemed unusually agitated. After several hours, Claire returned, her face pale and drawn. "There is definitely a presence in that room," she said, her voice steady but grim. I picked up strong EMF readings and recorded several EVP sessions. The spirit is indeed a man, and he is filled with anger and sorrow. He wants to be acknowledged and remembered. Claire suggested holding a small ceremony to acknowledge the spirit and help him move on. We agreed, and the following evening, we gathered in room 213. Claire performed the ceremony, speaking soothing words and lighting candles to create a peaceful atmosphere. She encouraged the spirit to let go of his anger and find peace. As the ceremony progressed, the room seemed to lighten. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and a sense of calm settled over us. Luna, who had been watching intently, finally relaxed, her fur smoothing down as if the tension had left her body. After the ceremony, Claire assured us that the spirit had moved on. We thanked her and returned to our new room, feeling a sense of relief and closure. The haunting presence that had terrorized us was gone, and we could finally sleep peacefully. The experience at the Ravenswood Inn left a lasting impression on us. It was a reminder of the unseen forces that linger in places with dark histories, and the importance of acknowledging and respecting them. We continued our stay at the inn, enjoying the charm and hospitality it offered, but with a newfound respect for the spirits that dwelled within its walls. Encounters in one night. For some backstory, I was 9 when this happened. It's etched in my memory not only because it was my first encounter with the paranormal, but also because it happened on the night before my birthday, May 24th. It was around 1 a.m., and everyone in the house was asleep. I had woken up suddenly after falling asleep earlier in the evening. I shared a room with my sister, and the room was dimly lit by my nightlight. Our door was open, allowing us to see into the small hallway that led to my parents' room, which was diagonally across from ours. I lay there in the darkness, unable to do anything but try to force myself back to sleep. After about 6 minutes of fruitless effort, I glanced into the hallway. That's when I saw him, a transparent man standing in the hall, looking back and forth between my bedroom and my parents' room. He was holding a briefcase and appeared to be a businessman. His hair was neatly parted to the side, and he wore a suit with patches on the elbows. Initially, he didn't notice me. I was paralyzed with fear, hiding behind my sister while peeking at him. But then, as if sensing my presence, he turned his attention toward me. His head began to move erratically, twisting and turning in unnatural directions. Terrified, I cried silently and pulled the blanket over my head. My sister, a deep sleeper, remained oblivious to the entire ordeal. Eventually, I fell into a short, fitful nap, only to wake up again. I didn't know what time it was, but an intense feeling of being watched washed over me. The man from the hallway was gone, replaced by something far more sinister. Hovering above me was an amorphous, dark, yet transparent cloud that seemed to be staring directly at me from the ceiling. It glided along the corners of the room before settling above me, emanating an overwhelming sense of malevolence. If it had eyes, I couldn't see them through my own tears. The entity remained above me, casting a shadow of dread over the room. I cried myself to sleep, hoping the nightmare would end. Our house had always been unsettling. We often heard a little girl singing, especially in the bathroom, and the sound of heavy footsteps descending the stairs. There were bangs and thuds that defied explanation. My siblings, friends, and I had once seen a woman's face appear on the wall, ghastly and transparent, like the man from the hallway. Looking back, it seems almost logical now. A singing little girl, a businessman, and a woman's face, they could have been a family. But the black cloud? I have no idea what it was or what it used to be. There are more stories from that house, more encounters with the inexplicable and the terrifying. But those tales are for another time. The unsettling atmosphere in our home had always hinted at something otherworldly. Growing up in that house, my siblings and I had learned to live with the occasional odd noise or inexplicable cold spot. But that night, the experiences I had went beyond anything I had ever known. The next morning, I woke up feeling a mix of relief and lingering fear. I ran to the kitchen, where my parents were already preparing breakfast. My sister was still getting ready in our room, packing our things for a planned weekend trip. As I sat at the table trying to shake off the remnants of the night's terror, my mind kept returning to the events in the hallway and the dark cloud. When my sister joined us, she noticed my unease. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. I hesitated, unsure of how to explain what I'd seen without sounding crazy or scaring her. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. "Just had a bad dream, that's all." Throughout the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to harbor unseen eyes, and every creak of the house felt like a ghostly footstep. My parents, busy with preparations for the trip, didn't notice my distress. My sister, thankfully, remained blissfully unaware of the previous night's horrors. As we packed up the car, Luna, our dog, seemed unusually agitated. She kept barking at empty corners and refused to go near the hallway where I had seen the transparent man. Her behavior only added to my growing sense of unease. Animals, they say, can sense things that humans can't, and Luna's reactions confirmed my suspicions. We left the house for the weekend, but the memories of that night stayed with me. I kept replaying the events in my mind, trying to make sense of them. The man in the hallway, the shifting dark cloud. What were they? And why had they appeared to me? The trip provided a brief respite from the haunting atmosphere of our home. The change of scenery helped, and I managed to push the memories to the back of my mind. But as we drove back on Sunday evening, a sense of dread crept over me. I knew we were returning to a place where the veil between our world and the supernatural was thin, where unseen forces lurked just out of sight. That night, as we settled back into our rooms, I felt a renewed sense of vigilance. Luna seemed calmer, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching us. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, half expecting to see the dark cloud return. Weeks passed, and the memory of that night gradually faded, but it never truly left me. Occasionally, I would catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye or hear a faint whisper in an empty room. Each time, my heart would race, and I would remember the man in the hallway and the dark presence above my bed. My parents eventually decided to renovate the house, hoping to dispel some of its eerie atmosphere. They brought in contractors to tear down old walls and install new ones, hoping that the changes would make the house feel more like a home. During the renovations, they uncovered old, hidden rooms and long-forgotten artifacts from the house's past. Among the discoveries were old documents and photographs revealing the house's history as a boarding home in the early 20th century. One photograph caught my eye, a picture of a man in a suit with patches on the elbows holding a briefcase. His hair was neatly parted to the side, just like the man I had seen in the hallway. The discovery of the photograph sent chills down my spine. It was him, the transparent man who had stood in our hallway. The realization that he had once lived in our house and perhaps met an untimely end there was both unsettling and oddly comforting. It explained his presence, but also raised more questions about the other entities we had encountered. The renovations did seem to help. The house felt lighter and the oppressive atmosphere lifted somewhat. But the memories of that night and the encounters with the supernatural remained a part of our lives. We learned to live with the knowledge that our home was a place where the past lingered and where unseen forces sometimes made themselves known. Even now, as I look back on those experiences, I am reminded of the thin line between our world and the next. The house taught me to respect that boundary and to be mindful of the unseen. The encounters in room 213, the hallway, and with the dark cloud were more than just childhood fears. They were glimpses into a world that exists alongside our own, a world where the past is never truly gone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share the video. See you next time.